Teachers are a very foundation of a free and democratic society, and when teachers are committed to teaching patriotism and Americanism to their students, those students grow up to be civically responsible leaders. In our efforts to celebrate the work these patriotic and dutiful teachers do every day in their classroom, it brings me great pleasure to introduce the 2023 National Citizenship Education Teacher of the Year, representing grades K-5, Kelly Garey from Caldwell, Idaho. Kelly, whose career in the Navy Reserve and education has spanned for more than 30 years, uses her military experience to help her students and community understand why veterans serve. As a second grade teacher at Buren Elementary School, she has not only expanded STEM access beyond the classroom and spearheaded drug prevention programs, she has worked tirelessly to establish programs that connect students with military and veteran communities. Kelly's continued efforts to serve local communities while organizing field trips, activities, and services to help her students learn about the recognition of American veterans and their military service helps to ensure patriotism and a sense of service continue to have a place in her classroom. Please join me in welcoming Kelly Garey, sponsored by VFW Post 3886 in Caldwell, Idaho.
Her plaque reads, Smart Maher VFW National Citizenship Education Teacher of the Year, grade level K through 5, presented to Kelly Garey, Van Buren Elementary School, 2022-2023.
Good morning, fellow comrades and honored guests. I am excited to be here today. First, I would like to tell you a little bit about myself. I have taught for over 32 years. I am currently teaching second grade at Van Buren Elementary School in Caldwell, Idaho. I also served for 30 years and recently retired as a Chief Petty Officer with the United States Navy Reserves. Secondly, I want to tell you how I got here. My father was the oldest of 9 boys who all served in the U.S. Navy. That was one reason I joined the Navy Reserves. I was only 4 when my father was killed in a Navy plane crash. 3 years later, my mom married the man who raised me. My stepdad was ornery, but had a strong work ethic. Every night we would sit at the family dinner table and have heated discussions. He did not really mean it, but would joke that teachers were too lazy to work and too stupid to steal. He would also complain about weekend warriors being a waste of taxpayer money. Again, he didn't believe any of what he said. He just wanted to get a rise out of me. Years later, I was talking to him and said, "You know how you used to complain about teachers and weekend warriors? And I became a teacher and a Navy Reservist?" He said, "Yes." Well, I replied, "It was a good thing you didn't complain about prostitution." Sadly, he died in a motorcycle accident years ago, but I know he was proud of me. And another reason I became a teacher was when I was in high school, my junior year, I did a class called Teacher Aide Practicum. So I was allowed to be a kindergarten aide all afternoon for the entire year, and I absolutely loved it. And that's when I decided I wanted to be a teacher. Fast forward 15 years, I was walking into my Albertsons when I saw a VFW table and went to make a donation. That is when I met Troy Jr. Oh, he wasn't. Oh, there he is. And Troy told me about the Teacher of the Year program and put me in touch with Master Chief Denny Croner, who's also back there, who not only helped me with my submission package, but recruited me into the Caldwell VFW Post. And voluntold me into the service officer position. I am currently the Caldwell Post Junior Vice Commander. That's okay, because I recruited Danny into the Gem State Chief Petty Officer Association. Lastly, I would like to thank everyone for this award. First, my husband, Michael Garey. I met him when he was a Marine tanker and Semper Fi. I met him when he was a Marine tanker on the I&I staff for Charlie Company. We were in the same building, Navy on the left, Marines on the right. He volunteered to come to my school and present the Navy and Marine Corps Drug Reduction Program for Red Ribbon Week, which I still continue to this day. We both wore our dress blues. We were married on the drill deck 1 year later to the day. My husband just retired as a tank instructor for the Army National Guard with 32 years active duty combined service. He couldn't be here today because he now works for range control out of the Orchard Training Combat Area, or Training Center, and duty called. So I brought my friend and colleague, Janet Godey, who's in the front row. Next, I'd like to thank my two sons, Grayson and Brennan, for always supporting both of my careers. Also, I have to thank my second grade team, including Janet, who had their classes make gifts and cards for veterans along with my class, as well as put care packages together for deployed sailors and Marines. I would also like to thank all of my former students who, as far as I know, grew up to be very successful. In fact, one joined the Navy Reservist and was actually in my unit. Last, I would like to thank all of my Idaho VFW comrades and the entire VFW family for putting me on this path and honoring me with this prestigious award. The last Idaho teacher that was awarded this award, who incidentally was a reservist with me, ended her speech with, "Go Navy, beat Army." I won't do that. Instead, may I have all active or retired chiefs, senior chiefs, and master chiefs please stand. Are you ready? Master Chief. Master Chief. Come here. Are you? No, please stay standing. We're not finished yet. Are you ready? Navy Chief! Navy Pride! Navy Chief! Navy Pride! Navy Chief! Navy Pride! Thank you. That was my favorite thing to do.
All right, Army. Go Army, be Navy. Kelly, the national organization would like to present you with a $1,000 check for your charities of helping kids in 5th grade. Kelly, $1,000. I liked that roar from the Army, I really did. So we got a lot of Army in here, no doubt. Love it, love it. Next, I'm very pleased to introduce the 2023 National Citizenship Education Teacher of the Year, representing grades 6 through 8, Susan Allgood from Toccoa, Georgia. I'm a Yankee, okay? With 2 sons on active duty, Susan understands firsthand how important connecting the veteran and military communities with today's youth is. Not only does she encourage every student in her school to participate in VFW Patriots Pen essay contests, Susan introduces novels and biographies about veterans, the military, and our nation's history into her curriculum. Along with examining the devastation and aftermath of 9/11, she has organized field trips to New York to help inspire and remind her students of a true cost of our freedom and what they do and the differences they can make matters. Please join me in welcoming Susan Allgood, sponsored by VFW Post 4346 in Toccoa, Georgia.
Her award reads, Smart Maher VFW National Citizenship Education Teacher of the Year, grade level 6 through 8. Presented to Susan Allgood, Stephen County Middle School, 2022-2023.
Good morning. It is such an honor and privilege to be here today. I would like to begin by thanking VFW Post 4347, Toccoa, Georgia, Georgia VFW 2nd District, Georgia State VFW, and the National VFW for their confidence in my career as an educator. Receiving this prestigious award is the apex of my 27-year teaching career. I can't imagine anything that could surpass this honor because it represents the reverence of those who gave their lives for the freedoms we all enjoy every day. For those of you here that have served, are serving, or have family members currently serving in our nation's military, please accept my sincere appreciation. I as well have 2 sons serving in the military. My oldest son in the Air Force flies the KC-46 and is stationed in New Jersey. My youngest son in the Army is in the infantry and just a few short weeks ago deployed. As a teacher and mother who has children serving in the military, I find myself listening carefully to the moments that define their lives as servicemen. Having never served in the military myself, I can't say that I know what life was like for you, nor what it is really like for either one of my children. I do know that there are many things that shape the lives of a soldier, and what goes on behind the scenes is something that Hollywood tries desperately to accomplish but may never be able to capture in a multi-million-dollar movie based on real-life accounts of important men and women of valor in history. Promoting civic responsibility, flag etiquette, and patriotism in my classroom is something that always came naturally to me. I also think that as an educator, being dedicated to what our Constitution represents is one of the most honorable responsibilities. So how can educators today impact students who desire to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, and secure the blessings of liberty for themselves and their posterity? I think that answer is found in our nation's educational curriculum, and that is why teaching middle schoolers the value of the ultimate price paid for our freedoms is essential to me. It is why honoring our veterans must continue. As you know better than I, the scars of a veteran can run deep, physically, emotionally, and mentally. I would like to see that our men and women in the armed forces, past and present, are treated with the respect and dignity that they deserve. Personally, I think veterans and active duty soldiers deserve the best health care, retirement, and pay our country can offer. The ones who put their lives on hold and on the line for others should be paid accordingly. And that is just one roundtable discussion my students have had about soldiers and their needs. Our students today cannot lead us into the future believing the status quo is acceptable. They must know their history on local, state, and national level in order to be able to carry on the legacy of so many. One such moment in history I'm certain you have all heard of is Easy Company's journey from intense training at Camp Toccoa to airborne landings in Normandy. The famous Band of Brothers, a 2001 HBO miniseries, depicts the lives of paratroopers in Easy Company, which was part of the 2nd Battalion, 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment, 101st Airborne Division. In July of 1942, over 5,000 young men first arrived at the train station in Toccoa, Georgia, my hometown, and made a 5-mile march to Camp Toccoa to begin training. Their 3 miles up and 3 miles down hike of Currahee Mountain was only one rigorous exercise they took to prepare for war. Our Toccoa Historical Society states, one of their most famous physical tasks was a 115-mile march from Camp Toccoa to Atlanta, Georgia. They departed Toccoa in December of 1941 and arrived in Atlanta in March of 1942, where they were sent to Fort Benning. Over the next few years, 17,000 soldiers from the 501st, 506th, 511th, and 517th Parachute Infantry Division, the 295th Ordnance Heavy Maintenance, and the 38th Signal Construction Battalion trained at Camp Toccoa in preparation to defend the free world from the German offensive that was World War II. Today, the train depot has been revitalized as a military museum, and the camp is undergoing restoration. My community is ensuring that those men's lives are revered for the prices they paid for our freedoms, and the history of their moment in time will persevere for decades to come. For students to know that this story is real-life history of men and women within their community and not just a movie is more valuable. But there are thousands of others who have given their lives to our national cause whose stories are outside the boundaries of Northeast Georgia. For the past few years, my 8th grade students have been reading and studying about Louis Zamperini, an Olympic runner and World War II soldier who served as a bombardier in the Pacific on B-24 Liberators. I'm sure you know his story. His plane crashed into the ocean where he spent 47 days in a desperate survival of his life. How does a body not succumb to hunger, thirst, hallucinations, and staving off of sharks to then only be captured by the enemy and tortured physically, mentally, and emotionally? My students are challenged to reflect on Louis' situation and how his story of survival gives them hope for their future, because they can find confidence in the resilience of this hero's character. My 7th graders have found the ease with which people are deceived and manipulated as they read Prisoner B-3087 and The Diary of Anne Frank, both from the perspective of children their own age who hid from the Nazi Party during World War II. Yannick Gruner survives. Anne Frank, however, does not. Additionally, without reading novels such as Ground Zero and discussing speeches and events surrounding 9/11, none of these students may see where American resolve can bring about the best in her citizens. I remember where I was on 9/11. I was teaching a 4th grade class when someone came to my door and stated that an airplane had crashed into the World Trade Center. Just a few moments later, with my classroom TV on, my students watched as unexpectedly the second tower fell. None of us knew then that we were a part of history. I remember clearly watching the news that evening and seeing the replay of President Bush receiving the terrible news as he observed a reading demonstration in a classroom in Sarasota, Florida. There was no doubt he was disturbed by this news. And the next day, he would make his famous bullhorn speech stating, "I can hear you, the rest of the world hears you, and the people who knocked these buildings down will hear all of us soon." I remember thinking how hard that must have been, knowing that he would send many of you into harm's way. When I think my students aren't listening, it's the dissection of famous speeches, memoirs, and diaries such as these that remind me they haven't been exposed to the reality of tragedies such as this on a national basis. Therefore, I think these lessons, as tragic as they are, impart the spirit of the best in Americans. And our students need to see this today more than ever. They need to see where we rally together rather than tear each other down, where we think about others rather than ourselves, where our differences are set aside to work together. We need to make every day better than the day before. Writing the VFW Patriots Pen essay is just the place for students to discover where their own strengths lie, where their own desire to serve this great country is perhaps mounted, and where they find compassion for you and all veterans. I'm proud to say that I've had several state winners in the Patriots Pen Essay Contest, and those students were so excited to know that their words meant something to you as veterans. Gathering here today in Phoenix, Arizona is ironic. The phoenix is a symbol of hope, rebirth, and transformation. Phoenix, Arizona is considered, and I quote, industrious, enterprising, and imaginative. In 1867, a gentleman named Jack Swilling saw promise in the rich soil, but it was void of water. His vision for this land came to fruition by the carving out of a canal to provide water from the Salt River. My point is that Swilling had a vision of transformation from a desolate land to one that would benefit the people who were searching for a better way of life. As I reflected on this, I thought, do we today share this common thread as much as our ancestors? Another quick look at history shows us that not only have Americans sought the laws bestowed through the Constitution, but we have also continued to disobey them. Franklin D. Roosevelt, in his inaugural address in 1936, stated, "There is a mysterious cycle in human events. To some generations, much is given. Of other generations, much is expected. This generation of Americans has a rendezvous with destiny." 28 years later, in 1964, Ronald Reagan stated closely aligned sentiments in a presidential election campaign for Republican nominee Barry Goldwater. He said, "You and I have a rendezvous with destiny. We will preserve for our children this, the last best hope of man on earth, or we will sentence them to take the first step into 1,000 years of darkness. If we fail, at least let our children and our children's children say of us that we justified our brief moment here. We did all that could be done." I do believe that once again we have a rendezvous with destiny, and perhaps, my friends, today more than ever. So educators must ensure that students know what has been done so they can continue to enjoy the liberties they may take for granted. It is evident that our veterans continue to bear the burden of history, and I don't want my students to forget it. That is one reason we join together and wear red on Fridays to remember those who are currently sacrificing time with their family for the democracy in which we share. There is a framed quote on my classroom door that says, "The future of the world is in my classroom today." My students must embrace the title of the future as if looking on time from a DeLorean space travel machine. Because as you and I all know, we blink and today is gone. We can't determine the future, but surely we can learn from past mistakes. I want my students to carry a torch to see all the good there is in this country and to aspire to make their future a bright one. They must be able to carry the flame in honor of you and all of those who have served and perhaps gave their lives defending the enemies of freedom and for all Americans, young and old. I implore all educators to focus on history, not as a way to rewrite it, but as a way to not repeat it. I entreat them to be role models our forefathers would be proud to meet if they stepped out of the pages of a history book. I urge them to demonstrate flag etiquette because many of our students don't understand the significance of it. And I pray that as educators, we can be a beacon of light to the children that are our future. In conclusion, I would like to reflect on the famous words of Abraham Lincoln, reminding us still today that we must remember our call as citizens of a free country, that each of us has a duty to remember the plight of those who gave their lives for America and those who still serve her. Lincoln said, "It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth." May we never forget that freedom is not free. May God bless each and every veteran here and those who encompass our communities. May He protect those still serving. And may God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Yes, I'll get that in just a minute. Comrades, Susan's also going to get a $1,000 check for what she's done with these kids. Last but not certainly least, I'm pleased to welcome the 2023 National Citizenship Education Teacher of the Year, representing grades 9 through 12, Javier Martinez of Maple Park, Illinois. As a teacher of U.S. and world history, American studies, foundations of American democracy, and armed conflict of international relations, Javier 10 years of service in the Marine Corps has provided valuable insight when teaching his students the fundamentals of democracy. Rather, he's coordinating travel projects to American military cemeteries in Europe and Civil War battlefields throughout the great nation, or teaching his students this value of supporting their community through annual Toys for Tots, holiday toy drives. Javier brings patriotism, passion, and his love of country to our younger generation every day. There's no doubt the impact he has on his students is one that will last a lifetime, ensuring the stories of military service and sacrifice will never be forgotten. Please join me in welcoming Javier Martinez, sponsored by VFW Post 5819 in Lamont, Illinois.
His award reads, Smart Maher VFW National Citizenship Education Teacher of the Year, grade level 9 through 12, presented to Javier Martinez, Caneland High School, 2022-2023.
Good morning. So I apologize in advance. I do not have a prepared speech. And for those of you who are wondering, this is not written in crayon. I ate those earlier. I want to start off by thanking fellow Marine Vicki Cobbett. Vicki, you in here somewhere? There she is, from VFW Post 5819 in Lamont, and also the commander and senior commander, Bob Rose, who can't be here, and Joe Martin, who's here with Vicki. Thank you for nominating me. I don't know how you got away with it, and the things you wrote, I haven't seen yet. Hopefully they're all true. I'd also like to acknowledge my mother, who obviously is not here because I am old, but Mom, you thought I'd get arrested when I told you I was going to go into teaching because you thought that my Marine Corps upbringing would not serve me well in the classroom, but here I am. Seems like it all worked out okay. And lastly, I want to acknowledge my lovely wife, Kathy, who about 42 years ago became a Marine Corps wife, followed me around the country and overseas with our two daughters, talked me into leaving because we had a family and I was good with that, but then looked the other way when I joined the reserves, and then watched as I went away for Desert Storm, and then came back and was still there waiting for me, which is a good thing, and then watched me as I continue to get involved with more veterans' causes. So even though you don't wear the uniform, you can still serve, and she has supported me every step of the way. Probably the biggest thing was when I decided to leave a six-figure career in the corporate world to go into teaching. I did not realize the pay cut would be so significant. I'm always asked, what was more difficult, being a Marine Corps officer or being a high school history teacher? And the jury is still out on that. I'm not quite sure. It depends on the day and when you ask me. But I will tell you this, they are equally rewarding. Working with the kids is amazing every single day, and I say there are no bad kids. There are some parentally challenged kids, but no bad kids. This is a message to all the representatives here from the posts across the country. Picking the teacher of the year for all three levels ought to be harder than woodpecker lips. If you did not nominate someone, you need to nominate a teacher from your post area. There are amazing teachers out in this country. They get a bad rap sometimes because of that one bad apple, and we all know, all of us who served, there was always that one guy or girl in that unit who gave everybody else a bad name, but most of them were amazing people. Same thing goes with teachers. They're out there. There ought to be thousands of teachers nominated next year. Every single post in this country has a good teacher in their community. Talk to the kids. They'll tell you who the good ones are. Go out, get to know them, nominate them. It ought to be so difficult to pick the best because there are so many good teachers out there. They're just doing their job quietly like we all did when we were in the service. Last thing I want to mention. The kids just need someone to act as an example. I'm going to give a public service announcement right now with your permission. 8 years ago, I was blessed to go to a teacher professional development where one of the topics was the Medal of Honor Character Development Program. That's all I had to hear. I sat in and immediately afterwards said, how do I get involved? They said, send me a resume. I sent it. It probably went in the circular file. I never heard back from them. 2 years later, on their newsletter, they were looking for trainers. I said, what the heck? I submitted it again. This time I got chosen. So for the last 8 years as a teacher, I've been blessed to travel the country, teaching other teachers about what the Medal of Honor represents, and providing them with resources to use the program with their students to teach their students about core values of character, about courage, commitment, citizenship, sacrifice, integrity, and patriotism. None of those words should sound foreign to anyone in this room. That program is available to all of your teachers across this country for the great price of free. I'll say it again, free. No charge at all. The recipients that I work for want this program in front of every kid from the elementary level, kindergarten, all the way up to 12th grade. You can help us make that happen. When you go back, tell your school board, tell your principals that there is an amazing program out there that's not a recruitment tool, that it's a character education tool, and it's free. And I'll stick around here for a little bit afterwards if you want to come talk to me about it. I am out here spreading the gospel for that program. I am blessed to be up here because of Vicki and Joe and Lamont Post 5819, but I want to multiply that impact. So help me do that. Thank you all so much.
Of course, we are also going to give Javier a $1,000 check for what he does with his kids. And I have a question for Javier. I heard you're a Desert Storm veteran. Are you a member of the VFW?
I am not, sir. I activated but did not deploy.
Okay. He just told me the magic word because I was just about ready to sign him up. He was in support of Desert Storm and never did deploy, so I cannot give him this application. That's a sad moment because I would have loved to do it. You all know that, don't you?
One last comment. It was not lost on me that the individuals from the VFW who are up here that seem to be in some sort of honor guard are wearing Marine Corps Summer Service Charlie uniforms. Ra.
So Javier, do you have any relatives near you that have deployed overseas?
Believe it or not, I am the only person in my family who has served.
Well, auxiliary, I tried.
But I am a member of the Marine Corps League.
Thank you for what you do. Thank you, sir.